These are the plaintiffs, Joseph and Kirsten McKeon. They hired the defendant to do a contracting job. The guy started it, then never showed up again. The defendant always had some sort of cockamamie excuse. They're tired of being lied to by this unreliable guy. And they're seeking the return of the $4,600 they paid him. This is the defendant, Charlie Olszewski. He says he did most of the work on the plaintiff's house, but was waiting on another payment before he continued. He knew money was tight for the plaintiffs, so he worked with them, but he's not working for free. After that, the plaintiffs found someone else to do the work. He's done with them and owes nothing. He's accused of being a no-show.
All parties, please raise your right hands.
Welcome back to the People's Court. Next case on the docket. The plaintiffs say they hired the defendant to do work in their house, and the guy just took the money and ran. The defendant saying the plaintiffs actually ran out of money, and he ain't working for free. It's the case of no show, no go.
The litigants have been sworn, Your Honor.
Thank you, Douglas.
You're welcome, ma'am.
Okay, Mr. and Mrs. McKeon, who wants to talk? I think
I'll
Mr.
speak.
McKeon wants to talk. He's going to burst at the seams. All right. You are suing your former contractor because, according to you, he just didn't show up. Tell me what happened.
So we had started using Charlie's service dating back to June to replace a kitchen floor. We had other work that we needed done, which included sheetrocking and insulation in a basement that was unfinished at the time. We had about 3 contracts with Charlie. The first 2 he completed without a problem. It was the last contract, the actual sheetrocking and insulation, that he did not complete. It started breaking up after he did the framing. He started off, first of all, by not showing up. He had
what do you mean by not showing up?
Your Honor, so we had to track him down. He was supposed to start. We'd give him a payment of $2,000 to start the job back in October, and then we'd give him another payment in mid-October to continue to go. And then around the end of October, the beginning of November, he was supposed to do the sheetrocking and insulation. We'd given him a deposit of $600 for that. And then he just disappeared. He just never came back. We kept calling him and texting him, and sometimes he would respond, sometimes he wouldn't. And he always had an excuse.
What would he say when he responded? What would he say was the problem?
Well, first he started by saying, first he didn't respond for a little while. Then he had told my wife that he had other clients of his who had started asking him to complete the jobs that he had finished for them. And then finally, sometime around mid-November, he had told us that he was having issues with his wife and her pregnancy, and that he had been in the hospital with her. But I found that suspicious because he had also told us the same story when we first hired him to do the kitchen job back in June, because he had told us the same story about why he didn't start that job right away either. And I had later come to find out through another contractor who had worked with Charlie on that kitchen floor that Charlie had lied to us back in June and July, that his wife wasn't having problems with her pregnancy, that in fact he, the other contractor, and Charlie were both on the job when he took my call and told us that story.
All right, so now it's November, there's no insulation, and pipes have been put in, I guess, and you're worried about the pipes freezing, so what do you do?
Yes, ma'am. So that's kind of how this whole thing started. We had a problem with the kitchen floor, and then we found out that the reason we had that problem was because our pipes had all gone rotten. So we had a plumber come in and replace everything. And so there was, in the summer and early September, there was a little juggling of schedules, but then I had contacted Charlie, said we were ready to get the installation and sheetrock going. He had completed the framing with help from another contractor who did most of the work. And we told him, look, before everything freezes, we want the insulation and the sheetrock done. And I told him, look, don't even have to do the entire room. If you just do the areas around the pipes, which were in the garage and the boiler room, we'd be fine. And then if everything else got delayed and pushed back, we'd understand. He said, fine, no problem. He came around, I think it was either November 9th, I think it was. We gave him a check for $600. With that, he told me he was going to buy the insulation. He was going to start the sheetrocking job. And that was it. That was the last time I saw him until January.
And what happened in January?
So, Your Honor, between giving him the final payment of $600 in January, I kept trying to contact him and say, hey, when are you going to come do this job? He said, oh, I'm sorry, I'll be there next week. I'll be there at the end of the week. I had this other thing happen. At one point, he told me he had another customer who had a water main break, which I don't know what that has to do with him because he's not a licensed plumber as far as I know. Then he finally gave
Tell me what day you finally said, you know what, you're done. When did you fire him?
It was towards the end of November. It was around Thanksgiving. November 25th is when he started telling me about the problems with his wife's pregnancy. And then it was the 27th that he told me he would need to come pick up his tools and he would have somebody send me a check for a refund for the work he didn't do. So it was around the 27th that I told him that, November 27th.
I'm seeing a text. I see a text here dated November 25th. Charlie, I've got 2 contractors lined up to come and look at the finishing my basement this week. I need my $600 deposit back. And he says, I sent you a message explaining the issues with my wife. If you can't wait for me, I will go over the contract and return what is owed back to you. Oh, and I don't appreciate you calling me a blank on the phone. Mr. Olszewski, what was it that you overheard on the phone?
When I was on the phone with him, he must have thought that he hung his phone up, but he didn't hang up the phone. So I heard him calling me some verbal words. Yeah,
the one that's in the text? Okay, so I know what it is. Okay. All right, but why weren't you there? If he gave you the deposit in the first week of November, why is it the last week of November and you haven't at least insulated the pipes, which was the only concern he had in terms of timing?
Just as the text says, and my wife was having problems with the pregnancy, and we also have at the time, my son was only 1.5 years old, and she was pregnant with my daughter, who is 5 months old now. So I had to be there with her.
But what did you do? Are you saying that for 3 weeks? Just a second. Are you saying that for 3 weeks you didn't work? Because that's 3 weeks. It's a lot of time.
No. Between 3 weeks, I did do some other work.
So
I'm not denying it.
You must have done it for other people, not for him. And at some point, you say to him, all right, I'll figure out what I should return to you. So he demands that you return the $600 and you don't return it to him. Why don't you return it to him?
Because part of that $600, the original contract that we had, there was another, he didn't pay me in full for that contract. I was never paid in full. There was still an $850 balance to the job if I completed it. Then the $600, there was more money that I spent on material that I tried to explain to him.
I got to be honest with you. I know I come from a construction family. I understand what I would do when I wanted the contractor to show up at my house and not at other people's houses is I had the best breakfast in town. And I would cook up the eggs and bring the little cafecito to all of the workers to make sure that if they were going to pick a house to go to, it was going to be mine. And these are people working for my brother and my father, okay? Because they subcontractors. So I know how this works. I dare say he does too, because it's not like you weren't here the next day, you're fired, like I see some litigants do. It's not like he didn't wait a while. I mean, I understand what you're saying. The health of your wife obviously is paramount to his pipes. But, dude, a lot of time passed, a lot of time. And and
I was also
at some point you got to pay attention. And when you tell me that the $600 was for other stuff, I have to point out to you the following. I have to point out that on the contract, and I believe this is your handwriting.
Correct.
Yes, ma'am.
It says insulation deposit $600. That's you acknowledging that you got a $600 deposit for insulation. It's only 3 words to interpret. So why wouldn't he be right originally when he demanded his $600 back?
He was right.
Then why didn't you give him back his $600? Because I wouldn't be here. So listen, I would be here anyway. But you guys wouldn't be here if you had paid him back the $600. So why didn't you? Now he's suing you, and we'll get into that in a moment, for $4,600.
Because what happened was he said he's going to get another contractor. Then then a lot of things were happening, and it was like, okay, after that, you could find someone else. You're going to do someone else. You got my tools. I didn't get my tools. I had to bring the state police there to get my tools.
Well, we're going to talk about the tools in a second. Hold on. We haven't gotten to the tools because the tools don't happen until January. So now all of December passes, and you figure out your light bulb goes on.
My wife had the baby. My wife was
When was the baby born?
January 29th.
January 29th, your wife had the baby. So I'm talking about December, okay? All of December. So we're talking about 2 months before the baby. So you, listen, this baby was an excuse for a long time. The excuses are done with the baby, okay?
Welcome back to the People's Court. Okay, we are about to find out who is going to have to pay who for the work that wasn't completed. Let's go back into the courtroom.
When do you realize that you have left your tools at his house?
Oh, I knew they were there. I knew that they were there.
Well, you write a text to him on November 27th. Okay, I will need to pick up my tools. You can leave them by the garage. Just let me know when, and my secretary will send you a check. To which he responds, you can bring me the check when you pick up your stuff. Otherwise, I'll leave them outside when I get the check. And you say, I need them tomorrow, the tools. And then he says, then I'll need my $600 check tomorrow. Now, you were about to say, I was only saying that, why? To get your tools?
Correct.
What kind of
Correct.
terrible admission is that? You're just like you're a liar to get what you want? That's what you're telling me in the middle of a trial when you're testifying under oath? And you don't laugh because you're not allowed legally to hold his tools hostage, which obviously you ended up finding out. In fact, what happens is
legally,
you go with the police
to
his house. When? When did you go with the police to his house? That happened in January?
Yeah, that's not sure of the actual date.
Your Honor, it was
when did that happen, Mr. McKeon?
And he never. It was January 5th, and he never actually came back to get his tools after he left them there back in.
Well, you made it clear you weren't. Yeah, but you made it clear you weren't going to release it. So I'm not surprised you ended up getting.
Only because I didn't want to end up here, Your Honor. I didn't want to end up here in front.
I know what hijacking means. You want something. It's just that you don't have a right to do that. So he goes over there with the police, and the police educate. Don't talk over me. You go there with the police, and the police and he knock on your door. And how did you react? How did that make you feel that the police were knocking on your door with him in January?
Actually, he wasn't home. I was, and it's.
Oh, tell me all about it.
I don't know. I was quite shocked. It seemed like it was out of the blue.
Okay.
Honor,
what did the police say?
They were extremely polite and said that he needs to collect his tools. And
they told him he could be arrested.
Yeah, they told me that I could be arrested. And,
you mind not coaching her in my presence? Let her answer. She can speak for herself. Go ahead. Don't mansplain. Okay. Go ahead, Ms. McKeon.
He told me that I needed to give them back, and so I walked down to the garage and opened the garage so that they can come in. And actually, I pointed out to where it was, and I said, that my kids' college stuff was also in the garage, and I pointed that out. And the police officer actually joked with me and said, "Don't worry about it. We know Charlie asked for the crock pot too." But as a joke. And
so everybody was kind of pleasant. All right. Anyway, you got your tools, correct? On that day, sir.
Yeah.
And so what we're talking about now that he knocked on your door with the police, magically your $600 claim becomes a $4,600 claim. Please to explain how it mushroomed into a $4,600 claim.
Well, Your Honor, I feel that Charlie lied to us, and he lied to the police.
How is that sane? How do you figure a judge is going to do that? Say, oh, you know what? Now you work for free because you lied. I mean, he's a contractor. No offense to contractors. No offense, Dad. No offense, brother. But, he's hustling. He's doing 1,000 things. Yeah, okay, you don't like how he works. That's fine. But you're entitled to what you're entitled to. You're not entitled to ching-ching, let that cash register ring, and all of a sudden get all your money back for work he did do. Which you were happy with, or you wouldn't have given him the $600 deposit.
Yes, Your Honor, right. But I had to pay somebody else to come in and finish the job, and he didn't even do most of the work. He had 2 other guys working with him who showed up without.
So what?
Yeah,
you didn't pay those 2 other guys. He did. What difference does that
Your
make?
Honor, he
all right,
kept
I'm finding in favor. I'm done. I'm done. Yes, he lied to you. You had a bad relationship with each other. I think you're right. I think that he is just in the same position as most contractors that I have met in my life. Their dance card is full, and they go to the person who last paid them because they're always constantly, with a big snowball right behind their heads, rushing to get whatever done, or not rushing, one or the other. So we're done. So I do find in the favor of Mr. and Mrs. McKeon in the correct amount, the amount of the deposit for installation that they paid you and that you didn't do anything for, and I'm ordering you to return the $600 plus prejudgment statutory interest since the time he should have paid you, plus, of course, your court costs. That's my verdict. Good luck, folks.
Thank you, Your Honor.
So the plaintiff is going to get $600, not the extra $4,000 they were suing for. The defendant, Mr. Olszewski, let me ask you a quick question. It really sounds like you took them for quite a ride for a long time, didn't you?
I really didn't. I was very patient with them. They at certain times they wanted to piece the job. So there was times where I had to wait for them to finally say, okay, we want to do the next stage of the job.
Well, anyway, I hope you've learned something from this case. You lost it, and you got to give the $600 back, the deposit. Yeah. Mr. and Ms. McKeon, let me ask you a question. How much more did you have to spend to get the job done with the other people you hired?
A little over $3,000.
Okay. All right. Were you going to give that to him if he'd finished the job?
Absolutely. If he had showed up to do the installation like we asked him, we had planned on continuing to use him. We didn't have a bad relationship with him until this happened.
Yeah. All right. Well, I don't know if you've learned anything from this or not. Anyway, you should be satisfied you're going to get $600 back, not $4,000. You all right with that part of the decision?
Absolutely. He owes us that $600 back. That's really what we wanted.
Okay. Well, you're going to get it. Congratulations. Now, let us join Judge Millian and her husband, Judge John, for another session of After the Verdict. Here they are.
Before you were a judge, before you were even a lawyer, you were a contractor's daughter.
Right.
So you definitely know the ins and outs of this. In fact, you and I renovated 3 or 4 houses during our marriage. Some of them were big renovations. One of them, you had no kitchen for like 6 months.
I gave birth to Alex, and I was in the hospital giving birth, and they were knocking out our kitchen.
That's right. We were literally just washing dishes in the bathroom sink for many months. But in a situation like this, where you've got contractor and homeowner, there's this dynamic between the power or the leverage that they both have, obviously. The homeowner is the money tree, has the check, can pay when the work is completed, when it's done right.